G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm interviewing Mickie Kennedy from eReleases, based in Baltimore County, Maryland, in the United States. Thanks for your time today, Mickie.
Oh, glad to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. I think, do you recall how we connected?
I think it was, I was using Interview Connections for booking, and they had reached out to you.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Okay, so eReleases specializes in press release services for small businesses, startups, authors, basically anybody who's looking to, promote themselves with the media.
Yeah, and it's a very important tool in the marketing suite, isn't it? Press releases and getting the word out there. Still to this day, it was obviously probably more important 20 or 30 years ago, but it's still very relevant these days.
Right. And it's very easy to get media attention these days. I would say 80% of the press releases that we get at eReleases are not newsworthy. Yep. They are a new hire. Our website's mobile responsive, and it's like they're spending money to send these releases out. And I'm trying to get my customers to be more strategic, because if they put together a industry survey and issued that, they would get probably, my experience is 6 to 12 places generally would write articles about a good survey or study. And they just, I don't know if it's because stuff comes from a committee mentality in a corporation or stuff like that, but the types of releases we get are just really sad. And I'm really trying to get my customers to think more strategically. Yeah, because if you are strategic, you can really get a lot of leverage with just, a little bit of newsworthiness.
Yeah, they can be a bit bland and boring, can't they, if they're done internally? So that's, again, why we should be leaning on experts such as yourself to get the best bang for our buck. And from what I understand of journalists and press releases, they're always obviously hunting for news. They need something new to talk about. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you got a better chance of getting something published if you present them almost a completed piece, so they don't have to do as much work. If you hand them something that is interesting and well written, it's much more likely that they're going to pick it up and run with it.
Right. And at the end of the day, they're acting as gatekeepers for their audience. And if this is something that they feel their audience would respond to, they would love to pick it up. And it's sort of like they have a almost like they're trying to curate what's really good little nuggets of information out there. And for that reason, I find smaller companies and startups usually have better success than like a large corporation or mid-sized company.
Yeah. And I guess smaller companies tend to ignore this part of marketing because they think we're not big enough, or it's too hard, or they don't know how to access journalists. And that's where you guys come in.
It is. We offer writing service as well as distribution. I had one customer who, most of the small businesses want to appear bigger than they are. And one of them said that the previous Thanksgiving, they canceled the Thanksgiving dinner and had the family over, and they fulfilled packages in their garage because they had gotten overwhelmed with orders before the holidays. And I said, that's a really great story. You should consider sharing it. And they really were resistant because they felt like, this is we want to appear bigger than we are. We don't want to, appear as like struggling or having an obstacle. And I said, those are the things that make you human. And I feel we could do really well with that. And they ended up getting picked up in Fast Company magazine because of that little anecdote, that story, because it's something we resonate with. All entrepreneurs grow through problems and issues and growing pains. And those are things that, we relate to.
Yeah, and it also smacks of authenticity as well, which is a lot more important these days, I think, in the blur of social distractions out there and all the flurry of news.
Sure.
And do you focus mainly on America or Northern America?
Our distribution is U.S. in nature. There are some international clients that do look at and pull stuff off the wire, but it is predominantly U.S. based.
Yeah, great. And the copywriting you also assist with, I've really come to understand the last 10 years or so how important the words we use are in our, not just in our marketing, but also management and our general communication. So I think that's a great skill to have on your team.
Right.
Tell us how you started out.
Well, around 25 years ago, I was in graduate school doing a degree in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry. And I had assumed I would just wait tables the rest of my life. So I started waiting tables and it didn't work out. My stamina is not meant for standing for 8 to 10 hours a day. So I got a job at a telecom startup. I was employee number 3. And one of the many things that I did there was send out press releases. And we were using a fax machine. We had just gotten a state-of-the-art one that had 100 numbers it could send to. And unfortunately, we had to reach 180, 190 people. So I'd program 100 numbers, hit send. It would take all day. I'd hit delete of those numbers and put 80 to 90 more in, and then hit send the next day. And journalists started to call and say, hey, there's a lot of numbers and statistics here. Could you just send that to us as a Word document? And light bulb went off that email seems so much easier and superior to faxing. And that's what got me started. I spent about a year contacting journalists, asking them if I could email them press releases, and they predominantly said yes at the time. And that's how I launched. And then over the years, PR Newswire reached out to me and said, hey, why don't you also send your releases through the Newswire? And I said, well, because my customers can't afford to spend $1,000 to send out a press release nationally, and that's what you charge. And so we went back and forth. They looked at my customer base and the fact they're spending $200 to $400 on average. And we worked out something so that all of our releases now go out nationally through PR Newswire, but you don't have to pay, that enormous fee.
Yeah, great. And so what year did you make the big leap into your own business?
It was October of '98. I think my first customer was my previous employer, and they were, my boss there was very supportive. Despite we were in a startup that I think when I left there was like 9 of us, so we had tripled in size. But they understood that I was doing my own thing, and they thought it was really cool, and so it was a great experience.
Great. And how old were you? That was '98.
That was '98, so I was 28 then.
Yep, great. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over those almost 23 years?
Well, most recent growth from like mid 2019 to mid 2020, we grew about 14%. And then over this past 12 months, mid 2020 to 2021, we've grown about 22%.
Right.
So we have been growing quite a bit. We're on track to hit $6 million in revenue this year. And
Fantastic.
When I started, I was doing like 40 to 60,000 a year. So it definitely grew very organically and over time.
That's phenomenal growth. Well done, Mickie. And what about number of full-time equivalent team members? I assume it just was yourself when you started. Any idea on what number you've got now in the team?
Yeah, right now I have 8 full-time employees. 6 of them are editors, and those are the people who handle the day-to-day interactions with customers and taking phone calls and chats and things like that.
Yeah, and
no salespeople.
Right. And we'll get to marketing in a moment, which will be very interesting, particularly in your corner. But you also use contractors as well as those 8 full-time equivalents?
Yes, we have a few writers that we use on a freelance basis, because that way we are able to better target someone. For example, if it's a women's industry or beauty or cosmetics or something like that, we have people that are better suited for that. If it's more technology or gadget oriented, we have writers that are better suited to that. So we try to match people with writers who are sort of experts in their fields, and they kind of have a good idea of what would be newsworthy.
Right. So the full-time equivalents across those freelancers would be what, 2, 3 or 4, would you say?
I would say probably 2 to maybe 2.5 right now.
Yeah, great. When was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
Well, I guess probably about 5 years ago, when uh, we had lost a key employee that was running day-to-day operations. And I found that she was sort of like a regulator on the business, because as soon as she left, revenue just exploded. And we gained about $1 million in revenue that year. And I found, one of the things we do is twice a year, we have a big semi-annual sale event where we discount packages of releases. And I found all these emails of people who said, hey, I would like to buy 25 more releases for $7,000 that I bought last time. Can we go ahead and do that? And she'd say, no, you have to wait 5 months until the semi-annual sale. And there was just a folder of all these emails, and all of them had left. They
Wow.
weren't using us anymore. And it was because, she should have known better, but I'm always like, take the money and say, we'll put you into that package again. Let's have you re-up. And so I found that someone who was antithetical to business and growth and marketing, wasn't good for the business and was holding us back.
Wow. I just could not understand her mentality around that. That's just bizarre to me.
We hired someone once that didn't work out, and she actually said, well, couldn't we just send him home and you just give him a check every month? I mean, she was completely honest. She was just like, I feel really bad about this guy not working out, but he really needs a job. And is there, couldn't we just do that? And I'm like, no, we can't.
We're not a charity. We're not a bunch of socialists. We're trying to run a business here. Yeah.
Right.
And what does success look like to you?
I think success for me is, providing real value to small business owners, startups, and people like that. I really got started thinking that I can help small businesses. They don't have to pay, the $1,000 a press release that, the newswires normally charge. And, that's sort of been my reason for being, because so many of my customers have done web-only releases that don't reach journalists. They really didn't know that it didn't reach journalists, but, there's several of these operators out there that'll take your release and just syndicate it to, 100 websites or something like that, but it never reaches a journalist, and no one's ever written an article about it. And you're never going to get like real traffic from real, readers to your website. And so I have to do the education of them of, what a real press release newswire is, the value of that. And, whenever something really cool happens with a company, it really jazzes me. Last year during the pandemic, we did a press release for Dining Bond Initiative. And it was basically buying the old model of war bonds, where you could help your local restaurant by buying these gift certificates, and you buy for $50, you get $100, and the money goes immediately to your local restaurant, your local favorite restaurant, if they wanted to participate. And they literally did millions of dollars in revenue, and they got picked up in over 150 places, including Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, the New York Times. All the big hitters covered it. And it was because it was a really depressing time. And here was a really positive news. And it was something that could be applied to everybody, even someone in the Midwest that had a local restaurant that was closed and they wanted to support them. Here was a way that they could do that. So it was a really cool to see, literally millions of dollars in revenue and all of this exposure from just a $400 press release.
Wow.
And, I challenge anybody who writes a great Google ad to say, I spent $400 and created, X millions of dollars in revenue. It's not like something like that happens all the time, but it isn't unusual to have a very successful press release and get like, tens of thousands of dollars in sales, or, several major trade publications and websites, linking to you and covering your story. So that leverage is just amazing. And, I don't know of any other place where that can take place like it can with PR.
Now, this one, really want to pick your brain on. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
I would say cultivating customer relationships and fine tuning those and trying to make it the best experience possible. I worked with, a lot of startups, and they're just like, you feel lost as a customer. You buy and you don't know what's going on. And, I would challenge anybody to sort of put themselves in the experience of the customer and what that looks like and how you would like that relationship to be fostered and grown after the fact. We used to have 80% of our customers would never use us more than once. They would try a release and nothing would happen, and they would just assume that press releases don't work. And we started educating them that, one press release isn't a PR campaign. Here's a book on writing releases. Here's ideas, newsworthy ideas that you could write about your company. We came up and brainstormed for them, and that number greatly improved, and that made a huge difference to the business.
It's really smart that you're measuring that metric, 80%, and then you started asking, why is that, and what can we do to change that number or get that number down? That's really, really good. And any other metrics? I know you don't use Net Promoter Score, but any other metrics for customer satisfaction or retention?
Well, we look at the lifetime value of new customers as they come in and as they age, and it varies, but it looks like overall lifetime it's like $1,400 to $1,600 for the average customer, and that's really important because it allows us to advertise and bring someone in and spend $300 to bring someone in that's going to immediately spend $300. So it looks like it doesn't make sense, but if you know that the lifetime value of the average person is higher, you can afford to spend that kind of money and sort of dominate in the advertising space.
Yeah, the unit economics of SaaS-based business, software as a service, cloud-based or ongoing recurring revenue, subscription-based business, in the early 2000s, these unit economics really started to come out in the industries. So it's great that you've picked them up: LTV, lifetime value, and CAC, or customer acquisition cost. And it's really simple. The customer acquisition cost is how much it costs you to acquire a customer. And lifetime value is all the gross profit you'd make from that customer. And obviously, if CAC is less than LTV, then surely it makes sense. And you've got a good ratio there of about 1 to 4, which is, I think, something that industry generally targets is 3 to 4 times. LTV is 3 or 4 times your CAC. So that's really, really healthy. And it's great to see, Mickie, that you have these metrics and that you're working on them, because not all business owners do.
Right.
And how did you fund the business?
I just started with, my credit card. I handled it, I felt, in a very smart way. I know a lot of people get really excited with starting a business and they want to go spend a few $100s to incorporate. They want to sit down and talk to a lawyer and make sure all these things are written properly. And I'm just like, I don't know if there's a business here yet. And I had started a couple of businesses before that. One did well for a brief period and burned out during the .com crash. Another one just never flourished or did anything. And I'm just like, before spending all that money, see if there's a business there first. Just go, as a sole proprietor, open a checking account and start taking money and seeing after a while if it's worth having a business. I didn't incorporate, I think, until like 5 to 7 years after I started the business officially, as a separate LLC. And I just was very cheap and frugal in the beginning because I had to be. Yep. I paid $30 a month for somebody to process credit cards for me. It was one of these services that I think technically was illegal, but a lot of people used them because e-commerce was very new at the time, and this was like pre-PayPal and everything like that, and Stripe and all those shopping carts and stuff like that. So I used that. I used one of these services that charged, I think, $6.95 a month for hosting, and that was pretty much it. I was very involved in message boards and bulletin boards, and established myself as an expert there and helped people, and that helped me get traffic and people using us. And as I got more revenue, I just poured it back into the business for many years, and I think I was fortunate that I could have a wife that supported me, and we didn't have to live on the eReleases money there for the first few years.
Yeah, great. So no other bank finance apart from that credit card, or no investors, just yourself?
No, at one point I was really excited. That telecom startup that I worked at, I really wanted the person there to invest in it, and he sat me down and said, "Mickie, I think you just want me to belong,
Yeah.
and I'll give you advice, but you really don't need the money." He goes, he goes, if the money could fuel the growth, and you haven't proven that you need money to fuel your growth at this stage, he goes, I would consider it, but I really don't think it is. And I'm so glad I didn't, take on money. And because I didn't know when I started applying money to stuff, what was working and what wasn't working until much later.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I don't know. I think that there's a lot that's happening with freelance writing and stuff like that I find really exciting. Maybe I would consider something more of that angle rather than a distribution platform. But it would definitely probably be in the writing space using my skill sets.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you've got a real passion for it. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
I think that the most stressful is negotiating with the newswire. They're a big giant corporation. They're used to charging $1,000 a release. I'm trying to be an advocate for small businesses. And, at one point they were saying, well, how about if we give you like a 60% discount, you just pay us $400 per press release? And it sounds like a great deal. I mean, it's a 60% reduction in price, but still, I at the end of the day, I knew that my customers were already spending between $200 and $400 is a stretch for them. They're not going to be able to absorb that. So it was very stressful to work through that, but I tried to find a win-win between the two of us. And I flew to their editorial office and met them. And we discovered that they have an editorial team that's 24 hours, but the overnight team doesn't do a lot. They're there in case there's a recall or a Fortune 500 company needs to issue something to Asia or somewhere that needs to go out. But a lot of times they're just sitting idle. So I suggested that we take all of our releases and schedule them by default the next business day so that they could work on them overnight during this free labor. And so we tried to come at it like that and try to find a win-win between the two sides.
That's a great way to approach that sales situation, Mickie, because you're looking for helping them, reduce their costs by using that downtime. That's terrific. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I would say split testing everything in my business. I started with split testing landing pages, and then I started split testing just pages on my website with changes. I then had a customer tell me, we used to send this box of a welcome to eReleases with all this fun, quirky stuff, a bag of Old Bay chips with the crab chips and stuff like that, because we're from Baltimore. And one person said, I kind of found it unprofessional. And so rather than get angry over it, I said, well, let's split test it. So I took a 6-month period where half my customers randomly didn't get the box. Half of them just got a book with a letter. And what I found after that 6 months was there was no difference. And then we monitored those customers for about 2 years. A year and a half, we knew it was not good for the people who received the box. They did not use us more. The people who received the book and the letter did. There was an improvement. And so once 2 years had passed and we reevaluated it, it was apparent that woman was right. For some reason, quirky and being irreverent didn't fit the face of a press release company or someone that they wanted to trust. And we weren't getting them to use us again and again, and they weren't really committing to press releases and PR campaigns. So I feel like, every bit of criticism, consider it. And sometimes people are just full of crap, but sometimes people that you think are full of crap are actually full of bits of wisdom. And so I was very thankful for that person. I remember being really offended when it first happened, but then I put my marketing hat on and said, well, let's test her and see if she's right.
No, I love that. That's really smart. You didn't get emotional. You didn't let hubris creep in, and you actually then diligently spent 2 years testing, and right. you've got a better outcome for your business on that. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I love that approach to customer feedback. Particularly, I can't remember who said it, but basically, I think it might have been Henry Ford. But that it's an unhappy customer is actually an opportunity for you to learn and change something in your business. So yeah, that's a really good approach. What have you enjoyed least about managing the fast growth?
Managing staff. I used to micromanage, and I would come up to the editors every time they had a phone call and say, in the future, this is how I would say it. And I'm always trying to work on closing, saying yes rather than no, yep. or, all of these things. And it was driving me insane. And I went to an HR consultant who was a friend of mine. She's, charges a lot for working with mid-sized companies. And she interviewed all my employees. And I told her that most people stay 1 to 2 years and move on. And she said, the reason they're leaving, Mickie, is because of you and your micromanaging. And so she said, the customer testimonials and reviews you get all say your staff is amazing and that they're so friendly and helpful. And she says, they may not be saying everything through the voice of a salesperson, and they're not going to, and you just need to accept that and move on. But they're doing a great job. And I feel if you want to keep these people long-term, you have to just, walk away or back away. Yep. And in April of 2015, I got the staff together and said, I'm not coming into the office anymore. I set up someone to manage the editors there and be supportive of them. But I got out because I couldn't help myself. I would still get up and wander over to the cubicle and say, oh, in the future, this is how I would say it. And it's been very helpful to do that because I've been able to focus on strategy and marketing for my business, and they've been able to focus on providing great customer support. And it's not perfect, but it's really good. And I stand by that. And nobody has left since that time. I was going to ask, people there. They're now 7 and 8 years who have been there, and it's definitely changed the business. And I was the problem. I kind of recognized that because one of the reasons I wanted to go in business for myself is I don't like being told what to do. I'm a control freak to a degree, and so it wasn't surprising that having staff under me was so problematic. So I just learned to let go.
Yeah, it's hard if you're a control freak or perfectionist, even just a business owner or entrepreneur. A lot of those weaknesses, I guess, are innate within us. So it's really hard to manage and change. And you've actually just gone the other end of the spectrum and said, and got the fuck out of there. You got out of the office, physically distanced yourself because you knew you wouldn't be able to help yourself. I think that's really good. And don't feel too bad, Mickie, because around 70% of people leave their job because of their manager. People leave people because of people, not, they don't leave jobs, they leave because of their manager. So it's not just you.
Right.
And what do you love most about growing a small business?
I love the numbers. I like looking at, split tests that I'm running. I create these theories of what if we make this one tweak change and what that's going to do. And I love it when I get surprised, little surprises here and there. One of the things that we did years ago was we created the entry level for new customer discount being our low end product at $199. And we didn't test it. We just assumed it's a lower price point. More people are going to re-up. And we've started split testing it at our mid-level product at $269, which is still a discounted price. But it's actually converting higher at a higher price than the $199. And so it's just like, I can't believe that. And I wished, for someone who tests so much, we just assumed. And you know what they say about that.
I was going to say, we know what assumptions make of us, don't we?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, that's great. And particularly in pricing, if you can split test or A/B testing, as they also call it, your pricing, a lot of people don't even think about that, but it's so, so powerful. As you know, you've just added $70 to the top line, but not only that, your conversion rate's gone up. So you've got a lot more gross profit coming into the business because of that. Have you read the book by Robert Cialdini called Influence?
No, I haven't.
It's a great book. There's a few vignettes in there about pricing. One is a jewelry store owner in is it the Hamptons, where all the rich people from New York go?
Yeah.
And I won't give the entire story away, but there's also another one. One of my favorite in the book is a toy executive speaking with his neighbor, speaking with the author, Cialdini. And he talks through the book about so many times the author has been caught out in these compliance tricks by big marketing companies and how pricing has influenced him, etc. So it's a great book if you want to grab that one.
Sure.
What's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think being able to take risk. There's been several things that I've done over the years that friends and family thought I was crazy. I joined a marketing roundtable like 10 years ago or so. And it was at the time $24,000 a year. And I joined it for a few years, and I keep coming back to it, taking breaks here and there. And people just thought that was insane. But one of the things that I learned there when they analyzed my business was I wasn't really emailing my customers. Mm-hmm. And so they suggested that I do that regularly and that I create a sales event like once a year that I do. And whenever, when my friends and family said, "Oh, is that Chicago thing that you're spending $24,000 a year?" I said, "Yep." I said, "Already I've made around $400,000 this year. And I suspect I'll continue to make that every single year, if not more." Yep. And so after a while, I could start to point at things that I learned from these other marketers and people analyzing my business that have really, helped me and helped hone my skills.
That's great. What's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think a habit that I have that's really good is to measure everything. There's so many people that say you should just do Pinterest. You should just go try this shiny object. You should do everything. And I feel like, you know what? If that resonates with you, try it, but measure it. Yep. And so that the time that you put into it, like a blog, is that really, driving sales or traffic that, converts. And you really don't know unless you have a good handling of measuring stuff. When I started early on and advertised, there wasn't a way to measure conversions like there are today. And we've got Google Analytics and we've got, Google conversions that might be changing a little bit with privacy and iOS and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we can measure so much more now than we could in the past. And I think that's really great. And you should try to take every opportunity you can to measure as much as you can in your business.
Totally agree. That is a very good habit to build.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes and advice for those listening?
I guess for me, I originally was hiring people who had impeccable grammar skills. We would give these complicated tests and we would evaluate it, and they'd come in and they wouldn't really work out great. They wouldn't stay very long. And after a while, I realized that the skill set that I should be hiring for is customer service. And so I hired an English major who had worked at Kmart for like 5 years. Yep. And she had never used her English degree. And I didn't really give her a grammar test. I assumed she had an English degree, she'd be fine. And, the bigger thing was, is she good with customers and could she handle herself on the phone? So that was a real game changer of learning what the real skill set was. Grammar, can be learned. Microsoft Word does a pretty good job of highlighting the stuff that doesn't, make sense. And if someone has a degree, it's very likely that they're pretty they're good enough when it comes to being able to look at someone's release.
Totally.
The real talent is, can they handle a disgruntled customer? Can they explain something in a way that is easy to understand? And can they take someone down the journey and hold their hands of what to do and what to expect next?
Yeah. What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think humor and fun is really important. I think that it humanizes us. It makes us real. I think that there's a playfulness to our culture, and we support each other, and it's a fun place to be. And I wouldn't want it to be what it was before, where people felt, Mickie's always criticizing us. I don't feel like I'm doing a good enough job because Mickie's always coming and talking to me. And now it's just sort of like, we're in it together, and we're there to support and help each other.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I handle it better now than when I was starting. I held off on hiring my first employee way too long. Mm-hmm. I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. I was gaining a lot of weight. At my heaviest, I was like 365 pounds. I was in bad shape. And, as I got employees, and as I started to focus on me doing marketing and strategy and the processes of the business, I've been able to step away and reduce my hours. And I feel like right now I have a really good balance. Over the last 3 to 4 years, I've been writing poetry as well. So I'm able to fit stuff in, and it just makes more sense now. And I feel more aligned with being a human than what I was doing before. That being said, if I had to do it over again, I feel like you kind of have to dig in and put in the hours and, really do the grind to push through to that next level.
Yeah. And how much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years? So books, podcast courses, training, conferences?
A lot. There's been a lot of courses that I bought. Some I've finished, some I didn't. I've spent a lot of money, probably over $300,000 with like roundtables and groups like that, where you have masterminds with people. I find those so helpful. If you find the right group of people to, talk with, I learn more from people having their businesses analyzed often than my own, where they're having a challenge. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm also a little challenged in that area. And so that's been really useful, because it's so hard for me being in Maryland and not knowing other business owners that are in the e-commerce or internet space who are also marketers. And so, being able to find your tribe out there and come together has been really helpful for me.
And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I have. The roundtable that I had was under a marketer named Perry Marshall, and he's mostly known for Google AdWords, and he did the 80/20 book of marketing and stuff like that. I found him really great to work with. He's a really disciplined guy, likes to look at the numbers, and he's really good at helping you come up with a hypothesis of something to test. And for me, I love testing lots of different stuff, because it's exciting. It is kind of addictive to keep coming up with different approaches and things to test.
And do you have a board of directors or advisors at the moment?
I don't, no.
All right, Mickie, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think the hardest thing is figuring out how to get customers, and where they are in the buying process and how to reach them. I think a lot of people I refer to stuff as top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Bottom of the funnel, they're closer to a buying decision. Top of the funnel, they may know a little bit about you, but they may not. And you just have to educate them and bring them down. And what I find is that so many people don't know where their funnel is. Mm-hmm. And so they're not knowing how to plug people in, because the things that you have to do to start a business is to find the people that are lower in the funnel so that you can immediately turn them into buyers. You may not have 24 months to educate educate people through the entire funnel process and turn them into a customer.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
There's been a lot, but I think the Perry Marshall 80/20 of marketing was a real game changer for me. There's so many things in your business that are like the 80/20. 80% of my headaches and problems are from 20% of my customers. And if you can somehow weed them out or, send them on a different path, it frees up so much of your time and labor and stuff like that. And there's so many different aspects of 80/20, the Pareto principle, that can be applied in your business. And if you can just figure it out, it can really make a difference.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I really like Entrepreneurs on Fire. There's a good mix of entrepreneurs. I think it's probably because of the volume of podcasts. He does like one a day. So there's a constant influx of new people and stuff like that. It's hit and miss, but sometimes there's some real great nuggets in there that I like. Yeah,
that's a great podcast. I used to listen to that some years ago. But yeah. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think a good split test software, whether it's Google optimized, which is free. I use VWO, which is not free, but it's inexpensive. It's under $300 a month. I feel like having something like that is really good so that you can start measuring conversions and testing different pages on your website.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
I would say to just approach it with an open heart and, be open to all the possibilities that are there and just go for it. That being said, I have thought many times of, would I ever suggest to my children that they be entrepreneurs and, do that? And I think of myself, the hours I put into it, the weight that I gained, the struggles I had with work-life balance, struggle with being an employer. Would I wish that on my own children? And I have to say, I'm not sure. So all I can do is give them my experience so that hopefully if they do, they wouldn't be face the same challenges I did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks for your time today, Mickie. I think the audience will get a lot of value out of what you shared with us, and congratulations on your growth journey. Almost 23 years, from 30 or 40 grand in the first year to 6 million and around 8 FTEs. Yeah, it's wonderful growth. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.